My hunting partner, Austin Brown, terrific guy, also has one of the Ruger Hawkeye Africans. He bought his after seeing mine, and he just did the lurk around on Gunbroker thing till one came up. And he loads 100 grain Barnes tipped triple shocks for his. And I think they're scandalously fast, like 3,400 feet per second or something.
Ooh, man.
Just a laser out of his rifle. And they don't have a high BC, but at that kind of speed, who cares? He shot a giant roe deer in Spain while I was right there with him. And that's a really impressive load. If you just want fast, flat, and a monometal, maybe you're in an area that's, got some regulations against lead core bullets. The Barnes bullets are a terrific option.
Hello, John McAdams here. Thanks a lot for joining me in this episode of the Big Game Hunting Podcast. As you just heard, my friend Joseph von Benedict is back on the show with me again today. Now, Joseph has a well-known affinity for classic cartridges, and he is back today to talk about another one of his favorites, the 6.5 by 55, or the 6.5 Swede. This is one of, if not the original 6.5 millimeter centerfire rifle cartridges, and it remains a sweet shooting, mild recoiling, and surprisingly effective cartridge for hunting all manner of game to this day, well over 126 years after its introduction. Now, I have included this episode in my ongoing Africa hunting miniseries. As you will hear here shortly, Joseph has hunted with it in Africa. It performed very well for him. That was not surprising to me because I know this is an effective cartridge for hunting a wide spectrum of game. Sure, it'll work great on stuff like impala and springbok, but the same thing is also true with some of the bigger species over there too, with appropriate bullets and appropriate shot placement. But this is not a cartridge that is just limited to hunting solely in Africa either. And indeed, Joseph has hunted lots of other places with it, to include in New Zealand. We talk about that a little bit as well in this episode. And we also talk about some usage of this round in places like Europe and elsewhere. In addition to all of that, Joseph and I also discuss the history and design of the 6.5 by 55. We talk about some of his favorite loads, to include favorite powders and bullets he uses for hand loading. We also talk about how the 6.5 by 55 compares favorably to the 6.5 Creedmoor, and indeed the even more powerful 6.5 PRC with the right hand loads. And of course, we also talk about some interesting hunting stories involving the cartridge. Before I get started talking to Joseph, make sure you are on my email list. If you like the podcast, you will love the emails I send out every weekday about hunting, shooting, ballistics, and the like. Sign up at the link in the episode description or at biggamehuntingpodcast.com/ebook. All right, let's dive into things with Joseph and the 6.5 by 55. All right, well, good morning, Joseph. It is always a pleasure having you on the show, so thanks a lot for joining me again today.
Absolutely. It's an honor, my friend.
Now, it seems like it is almost like a legal requirement out there that you cannot just even mention the 6.5 Creedmoor cartridge at all without someone else bringing up the 6.5 Swede. Now, that's a fair point, right? I think the 6.5 Swede was one of the first, if not the first, commercially successful 6.5 millimeter cartridge. I have shot it a little, but not extensively. I have not hunted with it either, but I know that you have. You got a lot more experience with it at the range and a field, so I decided to bring you on, talk to you about the 6.5 by 55, and we'll have a conversation like we did last time I had you on, where we talked about the 300 H&H.
Yeah, twist my arm. I love talking about the 6.5 Swede.
So before we dive into all the technical details of that cartridge and everything like you and I like to do, can you share one of your more interesting hunting stories involving this cartridge, maybe some of your use with it in Africa?
Sure. So I got started with that cartridge, I think about 8 years ago, when I just wanted a different 6.5. I liked the mild recoil and the good capabilities of the 6.5 Creedmoor, but I'm kind of eccentric when it comes to cartridges. I'm a mix of practical and eccentric, and I like stuff that is just more interesting than the run-of-the-mill, everybody uses it kind of cartridge. And I also love history, everything from military history to just classic firearms and cartridge culture. And the 6.5 by 55 Swede, or Swedish Mauser, some people call it, has all of that. As a fun little side note, it won its first Olympic medal, if my research is correct, in 1908, exactly a century before the 6.5 Creedmoor was ever even introduced, right? A fun little tidbit. And I challenge you to find a 6.5 cartridge that's been introduced in the last 30 years that's won any Olympic medal, whereas the 6.5 by 55 has won bunches of them. Now, of course, that was back in its heyday in the first half of the 1900s, let's say, but still cool, right? Mm-hmm. So I got one of the new Ruger Hawkeye Africans, which was kind of the special run that they were doing that year. I had it glass bedded by my old gunsmithing friend Roland Black, who was an absolute guru with glass bedding, and free floated before I went to Africa on safari to Mozambique for the first time. I knew it was going to be humid there. We were going to be hunting the swamps of the Zambezi River Delta, and I didn't want that wood stock shifting and changing my point of impact. And I also wanted the best accuracy that rifle had to give. Well, it gave it easily. It wasn't hard to coax that thing to shoot. I was using 129 grain Hornady Interbonds at the time. I don't think they're even available anymore, but I found over a healthy but safe charge of Reloader 16 powder, I was getting 3,030 feet per second with a 129 grain bullet and good accuracy. I hunted a sable. It's the only sable I've ever shot. They're truly wild, free-range indigenous sable there in that area. Shot a beautiful bull, about 98 yards, just very straightforward and clean, one-and-done sort of adventure. And then I did a bunch more with that while we were out hunting buffalo and so forth. There was a leopard biologist in the area at the time, and one of the PHs was a houndsman, just a wild man that ran hounds at night, and they were capturing and collaring leopards at night, and so they needed baits. Yeah, they needed baits to bring these leopards in so that they could pick up a fresh track every night. So I obligingly shot some baits for them. I shot several warthogs from 15 yards out to, one was pushing 400 yards just off the sticks. Yeah. And pretty quickly, my PH, Garth Robinson, great guy that specializes in elephant in Botswana, and his tracker figured out that little 6.5 was just a death ray. And so they were not just allowing me to take some challenging shots, but encouraging me to. So I shot this warthog, just center punched him, plowed him over it. I think it was 378 yards or something like that off the sticks. And then the next was a reed buck, and he was facing straight on right at 100 yards. It was, I don't know, 99 yards or something. And I got on the sticks, aiming at his shoulder, and the tracker said something. And this reed buck's just staring at us, not real spooked. And the PH kind of chuckled in a whisper and he says, "Can you shoot him in the head?" I said, "Okay." So I shot him in the head right between the eyes, and we walked up there, and not to be graphic or anything, but it just shows the effect of high velocity and an expanding bullet. Both of that reed buck's eyes had come out of their sockets.
Oh, my. Yeah.
The horns were laying out flat, and I took a picture, and ever since I've called it my blue-eyed reed buck. Maybe a little bit, I don't know, vampire-ish, but it was just really cool to gain that level of confidence with that little rifle that anything you shoot at is just presumed dead.
Yeah, man. That is very interesting. It is not surprising when you think about it, how well, the cartridge worked out. Yeah. But did you get any funny looks or anything like that from people when you initially went on that safari? I don't imagine they see too many 6.5 by 55s in that area.
Not so much. I'm trying to think back a little bit. Usually people have either never heard of it and they're mildly interested because of that. And the question is, how's it compared to a 6.5 Creedmoor? Or they're kind of admirers from afar, or they've used it and grown up with it. I've been amazed at how many of the New Zealanders and Australians I've visited with that it's a staple still. And of course, the Scandinavians and all the others in that part of the world know it and love it.
Now, a lot of people, like you said, may have a passing familiarity of this cartridge, especially in the USA, but elsewhere, but they may never have shot it. They may not know much about the details. Give us the Reader's Digest version on this cartridge, a little bit of its history, design characteristics, that sort of stuff.
Sure. So if I'm not mistaken, it came out in 1892. 92? Yes. So it's quite old, right? Well over a century old. It has a fair amount of body taper, which aided extraction back in the days when they used to experience some significant pressure spikes in tropical climates. And it's a true medium length cartridge. So it's not a short action, and it's not long enough to really qualify as a standard length like a 30-06.
Mm-hmm.
So most folks either make their 6.5 by 55 on a standard 30-06 length action, such as my Ruger Hawkeye African, or if they want to be particular about things, like I tend to be, they'll order a custom mid-length action. And I've got some stories about one of those I'll share with you as well. The cartridge has about 11% more case capacity than a 6.5 Creedmoor, depending on the specific case manufacturer and so forth. Typically, in factory ammunition, it's loaded to very mild pressures out of respect for some of the really old vintage rifles that it's often fired in. Now, I do think, to be quite candid, here in America, we've kind of got a little bit afraid of our own shadow in that realm, and most companies load it much, much milder than it needs to be. Over in Europe, where it was the military cartridge, the designated cartridge for military use in Norway and Sweden and so forth for a long time, and where all those rifles of allegedly weak design were prevalent, they still load it to some pretty impressive performance standards, closer to equaling the 6.5 Creedmoor. But in America, factory ammo is going to be, let's call it what it is, a bit wimpy. It's lower in performance than the 6.5 Creedmoor. If you hand load it for a good rifle, modern action, you can get considerably more performance out of it than the 6.5 Creedmoor.
Now, let's see if I can hold up this without. See, I can't do it. I'm gonna try one more time, and if I can't do it,
I got faith in you, John.
Yeah. Let's see here. I'm trying to show the audience a Creedmoor and a 6.5 Swede and a 30-06. So that's the 6.5 Swede there in the middle. You can see right there in between. 6.5 Creedmoor around 2.86 inches long, a standard quote unquote short action, and the Swede, I want to say, is 2.95, and then the 30-06, 3.34 inches. So, but that's also what happens with those older cartridges like that, designed in that time period before things kind of fell into neat buckets. Okay, this is a 30-06 length. This is a 308 length. So they just kind of built it, and that's what it was, and kind of like the 7x57.
Yes.
And other cartridges like that.
Sure.
Looking at the specs here, the SAMI pressure for the cartridge, I want to say, is 51,000 psi compared to 62,000 for the Creedmoor. But since it's bigger, it has more case capacity. And if you're in a situation where you can, like you said, especially hand load it, then it changes the ball game completely, because you can pretty easily equal it with a hand load, or equal the Creedmoor with a hand load with that extra case capacity. And if you load it up to a little bit higher pressure, then the ball game changes completely.
Yes. And it has the same strength of case head as a 30-06 or a 270, anything like that. The 270 is loaded to 64,000 psi. And in a good modern action, there's absolutely no reason to not load the 6.5 by 55 to that same pressure standard. It's entirely safe. Obviously, use good workup methods. Start low, work up, watch for pressure signs and so forth. But the cartridge will really stand up and dance if you give it a chance.
Let me pull up a reloading manual here. Let's see how brave different companies are with their reloading data for it. All right, Nosler. Let's see here. Their max load, 140 grain bullet, 2790 feet per second. So they're not getting too creative with it, beating the Creedmoor factory loads a little bit. But
Yeah.
tell us about some of the hotter loads you have gotten out of this cartridge.
So I've run H4350 a fair bit. I've run a couple of other, medium burn rate propellants in that same sort of family, but the one that really has just proven magic for me every time is Reloader 16.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get right now because the
Mm-hmm.
Alliant propellants are not being imported consistently into the States. But if you try, you can find some, and it doesn't devour it like, a big Magnum cartridge would. So you get a lot of mileage out of a pound. And I'm not going to give specific charge weights because every rifle differs, and you want to, load for your specific rifle and chamber and barrel. But out of a 22 to 24-inch barrel, I find it pretty easy to get 3,000 feet per second or a tad more with Reloader 16 and 130 grain weight class bullet.
Yeah. So that's moving along pretty good.
Yeah. And it's really, really effective. It still doesn't kick much. Pressure is, on my rifles is nice and mild. I don't have any sticky bolt lift or ejector swipe showing on the case heads. Primer pockets stay nice and tight. It is worth noting, by the way, that you can get empty cases from a few different sources. I've come to really like the Lapua cases just for their consistency. They're kind of the world standard. They have real good, strong case heads. If you can get them from Alpha or Peterson brass, those are likewise very strong, very high quality cases. But I've run a lot of Hornady. I've run a lot of Lapua, had good results out of both. The Lapuas are just incredibly consistent.
So the interesting thing about the 6.5 Swede is I was a little surprised doing research for this how many factory ammo options there are for it. There's, of course, a lot of European options, SMB, PPU, like you would expect. But you can also get Mauser, Federal, Winchester, Hornady, Swift, Remington. The Remington is not in stock, but everything else that I mentioned, of course, Norma as well. Everything else is in stock on Midway right now for it.
It's surprising when you dig in how available it is. And there's some obscure stuff that we Americans don't get to see very often that's pretty cool. I managed to find some 160 grain round nose Hornady ammunition built for the European market, primarily for guys shooting the European moose with it. And I've accuracy tested it. Shoots great. It's a fun load.
Nosler, believe it or not, offers it in their new Whitetail Country line of ammo. That was shocking to me, man. So that ammo line has just expanded like crazy from their initial offerings with it. So it sounds like it's doing well for them. And that cartridge would not have been in the top 50. I would have thought anyway that it would have been offered in it.
Sure.
But now we have some interesting stuff going on with this cartridge as well because it has kind of a non-standard case size. The CIP specs for it, and I think a lot of the original military rifles had what we would call anyway a non-standard rifling twist rate, 1 in 220 millimeters, which is 1 in 8.66 inches. Somewhat unusual for a cartridge that old, at least in my mind anyway.
I think because they were used to shooting those real long, heavy for caliber bullets back then, 160 grain 6.5s and 173 to 175 grain 7mm. I think the relatively fast twist rates in cartridges such as the 6.5x55 and the 7x57 tend to be faster, which is why they've crossed over into the modern shooting realm so successfully. You don't have to have a so-called fast twist 6.5 Swede to shoot modern bullets. Any traditional military rifle has a rifling twist fast enough to stabilize them, which is kind of a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that is funny how that works out. This seems to be the exception to, I wouldn't say it's a hard and fast rule, but it would seem like a lot of those older cartridges, they run a little bit slower twist. But not the case with this one. And the SAMI standard for it, actually, I was just looking at it, is a 1 in 8 twist as well. So I'd imagine if that's indeed the case, like say modern production rifles, maybe a Tikka or maybe that Ruger you have, they have a 1 in 8 twist.
As far as I know, yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, Norma has an interesting lineup of 6.5 Swede factory loads. You can get stuff with a light 120, 124 grain bullet. I see they have a whitetail load with a 156 grain bullet at 25, 26 feet per second. They have, let's see here, their Bond Strike is very interesting. 143 grain, higher ballistic coefficient bullet advertised at 27, 23 feet per second. That sounds, man, just right, almost identical with some other 6.5 millimeter cartridge that we're all familiar with.
Yes.
And then you could get a 156 grain Norma Oryx or something as well, heavy for caliber, bonded bullet, going about 2,500 feet per second. Now, another thing that seems like it's almost mandatory for people to bring up talking about this cartridge is hunting moose in Scandinavia with it. I'd imagine something like that 156 grain Oryx is just almost a textbook load to use for that use case.
I think you're right, John. And I've been asked in the past, why 156 grains? That seems like a funny number. If I'm not mistaken, it's a conversion from grams, and there was a minimum gram weight requirement for hunting Scandinavian moose in certain areas, if I'm not mistaken. Listeners, write in, correct me if I'm wrong here, but when translated over, it just came out to be 156 grains, and that's kind of cool to know in and of itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, yes, it's been used on probably tens of thousands of moose over the past century plus, and has served fairly well. Now, this always brings up kind of a fun point of debate, in my opinion, because you get people that write in hot under the collar and say, well, the Scandinavians have been killing moose with it for over a century. It must be great for that. 6.5s can kill anything that walks the earth, blah, blah, blah. Well, they can, you choose the right bullet and place it right. Sure, fair enough. Now, I have a lot of Scandinavian correspondence, and I've hunted Scandinavia for moose myself. I haven't shot one. I wasn't fortunate enough to actually have an opportunity, but I helped haul out a lot that had been shot. And there are some things I think it's important to understand. First, they're a lot smaller than certainly than the Alaska Yukon moose, and even the even the Canadian moose and the Shiras moose, like significantly smaller. They're bigger than an elk, but they're nowhere near as big as an Alaska moose. So, smaller stature there. And then the other thing to know is that many of these people used the cartridge because it's what they had, not because it was their choice. And several of these correspondents from over there that I've talked with say, oh yeah, we use it and it works, but we don't use it by choice. If we have a 30-06 or a 338, an 8mm Mauser, right? Those are much better. We much prefer those. It just made me chuckle. Okay, fair enough. It's like if all I had was a 243 to hunt elk, sure, it's not going to stop me from hunting elk. I'm going out with it, but it's not my choice.
Yeah, with this being a cartridge that was used by the Swedish and the Norwegian militaries for a period of time, I'd imagine it's kind of like the 30-06 over there in that, okay, the military was using it, and then it just exploded in civilian popularity in those subsequent years, too.
Yes, I think you're 100% correct. A lot of rural people have it, use it. It's kind of interesting because there are some countries that made any military cartridge illegal to have in civilian hands, but it appears that in the case of the 6.5x55, much like our 30-06 here, that it was actually made widely available to civilians, and as a result flourished for that. And the other thing I've been really surprised at is, again, I mentioned this earlier, but Australia and New Zealand, I would wager that in parts of those countries it's still more popular or more readily available than even the 6.5 Creedmoor. For whatever reason, they have a lot of them there.
Now, that is very interesting. Australia and New Zealand are kind of their own little world down there, where the animals are different. The conditions are very unique that they hunt under, and there's several different conditions you can hunt under in both New Zealand and in Australia. And so there's a lot of stuff that seems to just work well in this versus that situation down there that people just absolutely love. I want to say the 325 WSM became extremely popular in Australia, I think, for hunting sandbar deer. Same thing with the 9.3x62.
Sure.
So you have those kind of regional flavors of this and that. So I didn't know that about the 6.5 Swede, but I'm not surprised to hear that.
Yeah. I talked with a really accomplished ballistician and research analyst that does a lot of load development for even special military branches around the world and so forth. And he and his wife, his name is Nathan Foster, he and his wife test ammunition rigorously and aggressively on living critters, everything from feral goats to wild boar to whatnot in New Zealand. And of course, red stags and all the other available game. And I guess for a while, the 6.5x55 was quite popular. He's also a big game guide to bring for wild boar. And he was doing some hunting for really big wild boars. And he said if I remember our conversation correctly, he said during the breeding season, especially when their hide toughens and that gristle shield on their shoulders gets quite thick, and those big wild boars are fully mature, he had a lot of trouble with 6.5 bullets penetrating adequately on those big wild boars out of the Swede. And so he settled on requiring a 140 grain Nosler partition as the only bullet that he actually approved for use on those big wild boars with that gristle shield. I thought that was really interesting.
And it sounds like that's something that probably worked pretty well for him then, though.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not at all surprised to hear that that's a fantastic bullet choice for that sort of work. And I mean, that's what I mean. I don't know if there's anything this side of Cape Buffalo that at the appropriate range, I wouldn't hesitate to hunt with a 140 partition out of a Creedmoor or a 260 Remington or a 6.5 Swede.
Yeah. Yep. It's a great bullet choice.
Now, I am looking at African rifles and cartridges here, I just want to see if he made any mention of the 6.5 Swede in it. And I'm not sure if he does or doesn't. Let's see if he...
Kevin Robertson's book.
Sorry. John Taylor's book.
Yeah, John Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. That's one of my favorites. I grew up reading a big hardbound copy of that in front of the fireplace in my dad's library.
Yeah, I borrowed my dad's for a long time and was keeping it here and using it, and then he wanted it back, and so I needed to get my own, so to speak. So here.
I bought a paperback copy because I was the same. I needed my own, and my dad's had gone missing, and I was really fortunate. I was at a little hole-in-the-wall antique shop that has a gun section in Utah and found a stack of hardbound classic books, and among them was a leather-bound copy exactly like my dad's. So I picked that up. Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah, that was a nice find.
Yeah.
So I did not see it in a quick run through. I'd be shocked if it didn't get mentioned at some point there, because I know that I want to say Karamojo Bell used the 6.5x54 Mannlicher over there, which is not the same, but it's also pretty similar, I think, in performance to the 6.5 Swede.
Yeah, rimmed cartridge.
Mm-hmm.
And he shot several elephant with it. So there you go, folks. If you want to claim you can shoot anything that walks this earth, there's proof. Now, it's worth noting that he switched from that because he found those long 160 grain full patch bullets, as they called them back then, full metal jacket round noses, would bend in an elephant skull and skew off to the side on occasion. So even if he made a perfect shot, that bullet could skew off and he'd miss the brain, and then he had trouble. So then he switched to something with considerable more authority, of course, the 7x57.
Yeah, and it is interesting. I've noted this in lots and lots of podcasts, how certain cartridges would get a reputation, good or bad, based upon the factory ammo that was available for it. Because especially back then, when something was brand new, you might only have 2 or 3 loads available for it. And if the bullet was good quality and it happened to perform well at the impact velocities that cartridge was launching it at, then the cartridge would get a good reputation. And if it didn't, then it wouldn't. And oftentimes that'd be the end of it. And, so an elephant with a 6.5 millimeter cartridge is really pushing things, and I would imagine that there would be a completely different ball game using a monolithic solid or something like that out of it now. But I mean, that was long before Art Alpha and anyone ever thought of making a monolithic solid, or before it became popular anyway.
You could be right, although I think even a monometal solid could bend like that. I've seen them bend in Buffalo. I've seen 416 versions take on a little bit of a bend on a Buffalo shoulder. And those old full patch bullets were actually steel patched, steel cased, and so I think they were kind of robust. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's very interesting. I'm sure somebody at some point is going to shoot an elephant with a 22 arc just to prove that they can kill it with it.
Yeah, I'll bet. That's the thing. You can kill most things with most things, and we can debate whether or not that is best or not. But I mean, the typical use case for this cartridge is deer, probably starting out at the roe deer and moving up. And like I said, elk, moose, bears, whatever, right bullet, right shot placement, kill it very, very cleanly. Now, I know you have some experience. We just talked a little bit about hunting in Africa with it. Seemed like it worked well. Sable they're a big animal. They're a tough animal. And if you screw it up, they can be a very dangerous plains game animal, much more so than something like a kudu or an impala. So the fact that it works so darn well for you over there, it's just a testament to the right bullet, the right spot, and what that'll do for you.
Sure. And the one I shot, he was just inside 100 yards. He died very obligingly. My hunting companion at the time, Neil Davies, great guy, marketing director there at Hornady. He was hunting for a specific sable that he'd seen and was trying to get close. I think he was packing a big bore of some sort, only rifle, and eventually borrowed my 6.5x55 to gain a little bit of reach, and went back, and I went with him, and he got that specific sable that he'd been after. I think it was a little in excess of 300, maybe 360 yards, something like that. Again, worked beautifully. They're about a 500-pound animal, at least that in that region. I think they may get bigger in some parts of South Africa or whatnot. But very impressive performance on game up to that size.
Now, you've hunted with this cartridge in the USA a little bit as well, too, right?
I have a bit, but nothing like I have abroad. New Zealand and Mozambique is where I've put it to work mostly. And it's just because here, you can shoot a deer in a season in the West. Out in New Zealand, you're shooting management game and this and that, feral goats and stuff. You can do a lot of shooting in a week to 10 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the same thing with Africa. It's just no comparison for most people. The amount of game that you can take there, feral hogs in the especially like in the South, where we have a lot of them, that can be an exception.
Yes,
you could shoot 20 in one night if you're really good and you're in a hot area, but that's not that common. You can get a lot of experience real quick with something in Africa or New Zealand. We'll talk about New Zealand here in a little bit. Tell us a little bit about some of your rifles that you have in it and that have been made in 6.5 Swede.
Yeah, well, my first one that I ever had was a small ring Mauser, 1896, I want to say, Swedish Mauser, correct and complete. And I shot that, wrote about it in the vintage gun column in Shooting Times magazine. It's called The Shootist, probably about 10 years ago. And kind of funny enough, I managed to find some classic ammunition for it. It was old enough to be cool without being so old it was collectible, with those long cupro nickel round nose bullets. And I put up a steel torso target at 600 yards. In retrospect, I should have done it at 600 meters, right? But I managed to clang it pretty regularly, about 4 out of 5 shots with the iron sights and that classic ammunition. It was not incredibly accurate, probably a 2.5 to 3 inch gun all day long, but not a precision rifle. It's a military rifle and an old one at that. But that kind of got me addicted to the 6.5x55, the Z's, So then I got that Ruger Hawkeye African. I actually had to sell the military Mauser to fund that purchase. and hunted with it. Love it. Again, it's had some work done. Timney trigger put in, glass bedded, free floated, and it shoots really well for off the shelf factory type rifle. Now, about a year ago, I started visiting with a gunsmith in Anchorage, Alaska, named Ray Saft. His company is Saft Custom Guns, and just really connected with his approach to building rifles. He likes mountain rifles, lives in Alaska, hunts big, rugged country, but he's also obsessive about precision. And so the two have become a bit of an area of focus for him, where he builds beautiful, lightweight-ish mountain hunting rifles that are truly engineered for accuracy. So he and I started talking about doing a special build, and he said, what cartridge should we do? And I said, I don't have a 6.5 that I absolutely love, that I just reach for every time I want to go out. That Ruger Hawkeye African would have filled that category, but candidly, it's a heavy-ish rifle, right? I think with a good scope aboard, it's in the 9-pound range. It's a bit too much to take up a mountain for me. And so he said, all right, well, what 6.5 do you want to shoot? I was like, much as I appreciate and respect the 6.5 Creedmoor for its practical reasons, I'm an eccentric, right? And so let's do something cool that I can put a little bit of skin in the game with, meaning hand loading, to gain its full potential, that has that historic character that I love so much. And let's build a modern mountain rifle in 6.5x55. And he said, okay. And so then he started asking me about what bullets I wanted to shoot. We had this whole conversation. At the time, I didn't know where he was leading, but a few days later, he sent me a drawing. And he said, this is your reamer. Do you have any feedback on it? And of course, it was so much more in depth than I am capable of analyzing. I just said, man, whatever looks good to you, let's run with it. But he had engineered a reamer with tight chamber, minimum spec chamber tolerances, a lead, rifling lead and throat, similar to what's worked so well on the Creedmoor and PRC family, the 6.8 Western cartridge, to enhance accuracy. And he'd optimized the throat length and the lead angle and everything for those bullets that I'd told him I would primarily use. So he had that reamer built, and we built actually a couple of rifles. I'm holding one up here for those of you who are going to view this. This is the rifle that we took to New Zealand. My daughter and I took it. It's built on a titanium Zermatt action. I really love that action because it's got a controlled feed bolt, and two of the most accurate rifles I've ever fired have been built with this action. So I'm a little bit biased. I recognize that's probably a combination of other factors as well, but it's stuck. 22-inch proof research barrel. This is a Manners carbon fiber Ultra Classic Plus stock Hawkins bottom metal. That it's the Obendorf type with a slight drop box, so I can easily fit 5 rounds in this magazine. And Ray didn't feel like the contours were quite elegant enough, so he reshaped and sculpted that bottom metal to perfection. It's got a Timney trigger in it, and of course it wears a suppressor on the end. And this rifle is scandalously accurate. I load kind of a cutting edge load for it as well. I'm loading 130 grain Swift Sirocco bullets at this point, over reloader 16 powder as well in Lopwood cases, and getting 3,050 feet per second out of this with top-notch accuracy. And it just is incredibly effective. My daughter shot it more than I did in New Zealand, because I also had a 7 PRC that I was running with the new Zephyr Swift bullets. But Audrey made, let me think back, she shot 8 animals, 1 with the bow, 7 with the rifle. 6 of those were with the 6.5x55, and just a bang flop in almost every case. Really, really impressive.
You said you were using 130 Siroccos?
Yes.
And we talked a little bit about that earlier, and how impressive of performance that is out of that old cartridge. But it is funny how with modern propellants, modern bullets, good modern rifle like that, it's a rising tide that lifts all boats. It makes the 270 better, it makes the 30-06 better, it makes the new stuff like the 6.5 PRC better, but it also makes, something like the 6.5 Swede better too.
Yes, absolutely. I think if we just talk about a few specific examples, probably the most challenging shot I made with this rifle, as far as challenging the projectile itself, was on a stag that I'd wounded with my bow. It had happened. I misjudged the angle, the uphill angle at which I was shooting, and overcompensated and hit him low. And on this, with his outfitter I was hunting with, their policy is if you wound something with a bow and he's still moving well and clearly going to take a lot of finishing, you take the rifle and finish him off, because otherwise you can lose days and sometimes lose the animal in trying to recover him. So the guide handed me there's more to this story. It's a little more dramatic than this, but handed me the rifle, and I killed that stag at about 115 yards, trotting away from me, and had to shoot him at a very steep going away angle. At this point, I was hoping to just break him down, slow him down a little bit, but it actually just flattened him as if he was hit by lightning. And I thought, okay, from where the crosshairs broke, I think that was probably maybe a kidney shot. And I walked up there expecting to have to administer a coup de grace, a finishing shot, but he was stone dead. That bullet had entered just in front of his hip and raked forward through his body and into his lungs, and probably taken off the bottom or compromised the bottom of his kidneys. I think that's why he dropped so hard. Didn't touch spine, didn't even touch bone. It just flattened him. That's a pretty good sized animal. He's a good mature stag. And anyway, I was grateful that I had the rifle available, because there's this giant yawning canyon in front of us full of very thick brush, and he was headed for that. And if he'd got into it, it would have been a very long, trying ordeal to try and recover him, to even find him in there. The furthest shot we took with it, shifting gears a little bit, was 725 yards or thereabouts on a feral goat. They managed them quite aggressively there, just like you guys manage the feral hogs in the South, because they're hard on habitat and they're just prolific. And so I shot at this goat. On camera, it looked like the bullet hit high, but it actually center punched his vitals, and the dust just kicked up above and behind it. It ran a little bit, did a pirouette, and tumbled down the mountain.
Jeez.
So yeah, one shot, 725 yards. I was really pleased with it.
My goodness, man. Yeah, so did you hold up the bullet that you recovered from that stag a second ago?
We dug enough of them out, and they all got tumbled together in my ammo box on the way home. I'm not sure which one this is, but they all look about the same. Mm-hmm. So this is, let me see if I can hold up my cartridge here as well and get it to focus on that. That's the bullet, and here's a recovered mushroomed bullet. And we dug these out of animals, for impact velocities from probably 115. I think the closest was that stag, out to probably 370 yards, somewhere in there, and they all look about the same.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know Swift does not load a factory load themselves with that bullet, but Weatherby does with that 130 grain Sirocco. They advertise 3,025 feet per second for the 6.5 PRC.
I mean, Weatherby actually loads it in the 6.5 RPM as well. And I don't mean to correct you here, John, but I'm going to correct you.
All right.
Swift does make ammo, 6.5 by 55 ammo with that 130 grain bullet in it.
So I was saying 6.5 PRC for it.
They do sorry. Yeah. I'm with you now. I'm catching up.
But I'm basically saying that you're getting 6.5 PRC performance out of this cartridge with the hand load.
Gotcha.
Now, what does what is that Swift factory load for the 6.5 Swede doing, advertised at velocity wise?
I ran some through this rifle just to test it, and accuracy was fine, not as accurate as my hand loads, which is to be predicted, right? And velocity was kind of classic US mild load speeds. I think it was mid 6s or around 7, low 7s.
Yeah.
And just since I was running it literally 300 feet per second, more than that in my hand loads, plus getting tuned hand load levels of accuracy, I've just always hunted with my hand loaded versions.
Now, when I was in Africa this past summer with a couple of podcast listeners, we had the opportunity one night to do a jackal hunt at night with thermals, calling them in. And the guy that was doing that with us had a real nice 6.5 Swede set up with a thermal scope and everything and a silencer. And man, that rifle was just a joy to shoot too. I mean, you almost could not feel the recoil of it with that big heavy scope and the silencer on it and all that stuff. Great rifle to start out with if you don't want a lot of recoil. But that's also not saying that you have to move to something bigger either, because the thing will darn sure work as well on all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, recoil is mild. It's a 6.5 Creedmoor family of cartridge. It burns less propellant than the 6.5 PRC. With hand loads, you're achieving, as you just mentioned, close to the same level of velocity, but with a little less recoil. So I really find it is in a kind of a sweet spot. In fact, we started calling this rifle the 6.5 Swede Heart or the Swede Moor, because it's more than a Creedmoor, right, in New Zealand, and just having a good chuckle over that. But my daughter Audrey is a little wispy thing, 5'3", and just shoots it incredibly well. She's pretty accomplished shooter. I've had her shooting since she was little, and she shoots up through the 7mm magnums without any trouble at all. Her go-to rifle for hunting elk and deer here in Idaho is a 6.8 Western. So this is quite mild for her, but she loves it because of the good trigger, the reliable accuracy, and those really emphatic kills, which I think is in part, good bullet construction and on her part, good shot placement.
Now, as far as rifles go, you showed us your custom rifle. We've talked about your Ruger Hawkeye African. That's not something they offer now, but they have in the past. Yes. I want to say you were on the podcast with me in 2020 or something like that, and you said, that at that year they were manufacturing them, and they're always rotating cartridges in and out of different lineups. Yes. Running for a year or two. Of course, you can get the old Mausers like you talked about. I know Tika. You can get them new production rifles in that. Any other rifles that you're aware of?
If you look in the European market, you find a lot of them. Of course, Mauser, Sacco, Sauer, Blaser, all of those over there are readily available in the 6.5x55. Here in the U.S., my go-to, if you just want a great shooting rifle and you don't care too much about a historic configuration, get a Tika. They're gonna shoot fantastically well. If you want something classic and you don't mind waiting a bit, I would get on something like Gunbroker and just start watching and search up, see if you can find a used Hawkeye African coming through the rotation there and buy that. But just off the cuff, I can't think of that many other U.S. manufacturers that are offering it here. So you're probably better off ordering a Tika or a Sacco or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, like you said about the Tikas, they're not historical, they're not cool in that respect, but they are cool in that you can get them and that they work and they don't cost a whole lot of money either.
Yes.
I was messing around on Gunbroker. I found I think like 2 Winchester Model 70s that were chambered in it. I don't know when they were made. They don't offer them now, but I think the Winchester Model 70 is kind of like the Ruger #1, where it's been made in almost everything that you could think of at one point or another. I'll bet Ruger offered it in the #1 at some point too, even if it's not now.
Yeah, or you can find them. You can just look under Ruger #1s on Gunbroker, and generally you can find one of those listed. They're more common than the bolt action Hawkeye Africans.
Now, you've talked about hand loading it with the Sirocco, the 129 grain Interbond, but this is also, there's a pile of 6.5 millimeter bullets from almost any company under the sun that you could hand load in this cartridge as well. Have you tried anything else other than those two?
Yes. My hunting partner, Austin Brown, terrific guy. Also has one of the Ruger Hawkeye Africans. He bought his after seeing mine, and he just did the lurk around on gunbroker thing till one came up, and he loads 100 grain Barnes tipped triple shocks for his, and I think they're doing they're scandalously fast, like 3,400 feet per second or something.
Oh man,
just a laser out of his rifle. And they don't have a high BC, but at that kind of speed, who cares? He shot a giant roe deer in Spain while I was right there with him. And that's a really impressive load. If you just want fast, flat, and a monometal, maybe you're in an area that's, got some regulations against lead core bullets. The Barnes bullets are a terrific option. I've shot a fair number of the heavier bullets, just testing them, like up to and including that Hornady round nose, but I've never hunted game with them. So, I have no qualms about doing so. In fact, I really want to shoot something with a big round nose, just because.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I had thought that you guys had hunted, or rather Austin had hunted roe deer with the 6.5 Swede. He was on the podcast with me in episode 272. So guys can check that out and hear that whole story of Austin Brown and JBB in Europe on that hunt. And while you were talking, I looked on Gunbroker. They actually have several Ruger 77 Hawkeye International rifles in 6.5 Swede with the full length Mannlicher stock on them. My cousin has one of those rifles in 9.3 by 62, so it's really cool. That'd be a cool setup to have. There's several of those European style rifles with that stock on them in those European cartridges.
Yes, and I think they've built those just recently, so they're probably fairly plentiful. If you want a classic 6.5 by 55, that'd be a good one. Now that's kind of stirred a memory in the dusty recesses of my old brain here. I'm pretty sure that I had a listener for the Backcountry Hunting podcast write in and say he'd bought one of those. And I said, how's it shoot for you? And he said, great. And he sent me some target pictures, which is kind of cool. It's a cartridge that is known for inherent accuracy and for being forgiving to load, which is maybe particularly applicable when you're running a Mannlicher style rifle with that full length forend, because those introduce some potential accuracy issues. So start with a forgivingly accurate cartridge, and you're more likely to get good results.
All right. Well, very, very good. So we've talked about rifles. We talked about factory ammo. Talked about some of the bullets you used. You said you liked Reloader 16 as a powder. And then did you say 4350 is another good one?
Yeah, about any propellant that's optimized, funny enough, for the 6mm Creedmoor is going to be splendid in the 6.5 by 55. It's got a little bit bigger powder propellant, reservoir to bore ratio than the 6.5 Creedmoor. So more like the 6mm Creedmoor, even a 25 Creedmoor. But anything in that middle burn rate propellant type will serve. I've just found that Reloader 16 gives the best velocity, incredible accuracy at no pressure, as long as you're reasonable with it, right?
Yeah, it seems like those Reloader powders are known for that when you're using them in general in the appropriate cartridge for that that burn rate.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be real great to have those more widely available. But I'm glad that you have a good stockpile of it that you're sitting on. It sounds like.
Well, I've burned through a lot of it.
I was talking to a guy one time that he said that he got a fantastic deal on Reloader 26 in 2020 or something, right before things just went crazy. And he said he bought like 100 pounds of it or something. And
that's like Bitcoin.
Yeah. I was like, man, be careful telling people that you have that. That's yeah. But like say in 2022 or maybe 2024 or something like that, a pile of Reloader 26 with a bunch of the federal gold match primers, man, you're basically a millionaire. You could retire off all that stuff.
No doubt.
Well, do you have any other interesting stories involving the 6.5 by 55 that you would like to share before we say goodbye?
No, I wish I did. Someday I'd love to shoot a Scandinavian moose with one, just because, that seems like the right thing to do. I'm going to continue hunting with it because unlike a year ago when I told the gunsmith, Ray Saft, that I didn't have a 6.5, that I just reached for by preference every time I needed a rifle. I now do. This rifle that he built me is incredible, and my daughter and I have built great memories with it, and it's just a favorite. I'm a little bit odd that way. I don't need to have readily available factory ammo to be real happy with a rifle. In fact, I prefer to have good tuned handloads, so kind of ideal for me. But if you like classic history, if you like being able to tell people that your cartridge has won a myriad of gold medals at the Olympics while nobody else's 6.5 cartridge has, you get one. It's a great cartridge. It's a lot of fun, and components and dies, all that are very widely available. So it's a great classic if you just want to have an easy shooting, easy to load, very readily available type.
All right. Well, very, very good. And, like we talked about too, very versatile cartridge. You can use it for chamois up in the mountains. You can use it for the stuff in New Zealand that you talked about, hogs, all the way up to red stag and whatnot there. You could use it on springbok, impala, blessbok in Africa, all the way up to and including sable and things like that. And, white-tailed deer, elk, and the like in the United States as well.
You sure can. And in fact, I did shoot a chamois in New Zealand with this rifle. I'll send you a picture of it if you want to plug it in. It's pretty cool.
That sounds good. That may be the one that maybe we use that for a thumbnail or something for this episode. Good. All right. Well, tell us a little bit about your podcast and what you have going on in your world these days, Joseph.
Sure. And thanks for the opportunity, John. It's the Backcountry Hunting Podcast. We've been rocking and rolling since early 2019, and it's become almost like a family member. It requires regular attention, but gives me a lot of love and gratification in publishing it. We publish weekly. Every Friday morning, you wake up to find a fresh episode. Backcountry Hunting Podcast. We focus on trying to educate, entertain, and inspire people to hunt more, and especially to brave those adventures, whether it's the true wilderness, backcountry in the Rocky Mountains or Alaska or something, or even just traveling international to do something that you never thought you'd do. We like to encourage people to live their dreams.
All right. Well, very, very good. Your podcast, I want to say, gosh, you've been around almost exactly as long as I have. I started in May of 2019. We have very, very similar numbers of episodes that we've put out. I publish on Thursdays. You publish on Fridays. There's a lot of audience crossover between our shows. But if you're one of the rare people that listens to this podcast, you don't listen to the Backcountry Hunting Podcast, well, maybe check it out. And you get some good stuff from both of us at the end of the week going into the weekend. So, Joseph, it was a pleasure having you on the show. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Likewise, my friend. It's always fun.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Be sure that you answer the poll question on Spotify and on YouTube regarding your thoughts on your favorite 6.5 millimeter cartridge. Let me know what you thought about this episode, and if you would like more in-depth shows like this, where I interview another hunter or shooter about a single cartridge like we did with this one with the 6.5x55, as well as Joseph's previous appearance on the show where we talk about the 300 H&H. Also, shoot me an email about all of this, john@thebiggamehuntingblog.com. Give me some recommendations on who you think I should talk to and what cartridge you would like us to discuss. Now, like I mentioned previously, Joseph, this isn't his first appearance on the show. He's been on the show many, many times previously. In fact, he's been on the show so many times, he has his own YouTube playlist. He was on in 368, like I talked about, talking about the 300 H&H. We talked about bighorn sheep hunting, moose hunting, caribou hunting, elk hunting rifles, and bullets. He's also played my best caliber game with me, all that kind of stuff. Those are all great shows. Links are in the episode description. And if you like all of that stuff, check out his show as well, the Backcountry Hunting Podcast, and follow him on Instagram. Now, like I have said many times in the past, don't wait to hunt Africa if that is something you want to do. We still have a few more openings remaining for October and November of 2026 if you're looking for something to do this fall as I record this. Temperatures are starting to warm up during those months, but hunts like that late in the dry season are a fantastic time to hunt all manner of game with us in South Africa, but especially kudu. We also have some availability in late 2027 in our schedule. I will probably open bookings for 2028 at the very end of this year, late November, December. Email me, john@thebiggamehuntingblog.com, to get on the wait list for 2028. Now, if you book a hunt with us, you'll be hunting with Kubus, Christian, and or Johan in the exact same places where I've talked about hunting in South Africa in detail in previous episodes, to include during the 2022 and 2025 listener hunts I did with Fernando, Mike, Steve, Chris, and Dave. I will also be available to you to help answer questions, set your mind at ease, sort out logistics, all of that stuff, just to make sure that you are set up for a fun, successful, and safe trip. You can hunt plains game, you can hunt buffalo, you can hunt both if you like. Visit bestsafarihunt.com to learn more about our hunts. Email me, john@thebiggamehuntingblog.com as well, and we can talk about things in more detail if you would like. When you contact me, be sure that you tell me you are a podcast listener. I will give you a special bonus. Remember, you can make your dream hunt turn into a reality, and we can help. Thanks for listening. I'll see you back here next time on the Big Game Hunting Podcast.